Hello again. This is Ashin D'Silva from WSO2 coming to you live with another Identity in 15 session. Today, I'll be talking about how to integrate GitHub with WSO2 Identity Server. So this is the third part of the integrations mini-series that we've been doing over the past couple of videos. So this is the third one where we integrate GitHub with our identity server. And if you're interested with Google or integrating Facebook with the identity server, please have a look at the two previous videos, which will be shared down in the description below. And 65 or Apple, please stay tuned, and we'll be covering those sessions as well in the following weeks. So let's get started with GitHub. So when I said that we'll be integrating GitHub with Identity Server, I meant that we'll be adding GitHub as an IDP. So this is what happens when we use GitHub as an IDP. So, so first off, you would have registered your application in your Identity Server. And for that particular application, you would have added GitHub as an IDP. So when you log into your application, here, your application would forward that authorization request over to the identity server. So the identity server would then recognize that GitHub has been assigned as the IDP for that particular application, and then forward your request to GitHub. So then you'll be prompted for your GitHub credentials. And this is where you enter your username, GitHub username and password. So once GitHub has authenticated you, it would send a successful response back to the identity server, and the identity server would then in turn send a successful response back to your application, and the login flow thus completes. So yeah, so let's dive right into the hands-on session and see how all of this works. First off, let's start with setting up our identity server instance. So here I'm using the latest 5.11 pack, and I've already downloaded it and extracted it here. So once you have your identity server ready, let's download our GitHub Authenticator. So as you can see in the documentation here, you'll be able to download your GitHub artifacts in our connector store. So let's go ahead and download the Authenticator. We just have to enter our email here. Okay, so after downloading, what we have to do is we need to locate it, copy it, and then paste it over in our drop-ins folder. So the drop-ins folder is located inside our IS home directory, repository, components, and drop-ins. Okay. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and start our identity server. Okay, so while that is starting up, we can head over to GitHub and register our application there. So yeah, let's head back to GitHub. Yeah, so this is my GitHub. And here, let's open our settings. The network seems a little bit slow. Yeah, okay. So settings. And if you scroll down here, you can see the developer settings section, like that. And what we need to create is an auth application. So click on auth apps. Okay, I can see here that I've already registered an application, but just let's go ahead and register a new application. Okay, so these are the details that they require. So let's add a name here. Let's say WSO2IS. And then they ask for a homepage URL. So this homepage URL is the main page URL of the application, the client application that we are going to use. So for demonstration purposes, I will be using our Travelocity sample web app for this. So I'm going to enter the homepage URL of the Travelocity web app. Okay, and then they ask for the authorization callback URL. So as you can see in the documentation here, yeah, we need to point it to our common auth endpoint over in the identity server. Let's copy that over here and click register application. Yeah, so now you can see here your client ID, and what you need to do next is to generate a new client secret. Okay, so now that we have a client ID and secret, yeah, so the application registration on GitHub now is done. Now we need, yeah, our server is up and running. Now let's register GitHub as an IDP in the identity server. Okay, so in the left panel here, in the identity provider section, click add. Okay, so yeah, let's add name as GitHub IDP and expand this federated authenticator section. And if you scroll to the bottom, now you can see the GitHub configuration that we added into drop-ins. We need to enable that. And here we need to paste the client ID and secret that we generated earlier. So copy the client ID, copy that, and client secret. Yeah, that's good too. The others are mandatory, so we can just go ahead and register. Okay, so now registering GitHub as an IDP over at the identity server is now complete. So next we need to register our client application. As I mentioned earlier, I said that I'll be using the Travelocity app. So if you also want to use the same application for testing purposes, you can head over to our samples repository and go in the releases, you're able to find the Travelocity WAR file of the sample application, and the link to the repo will be shared down in the description below. So back to our identity server. Let's add the service provider name. Okay, so first off, we'll add the inbound authentication configuration. So since the Travelocity is a SAML application, let's configure SAML properties. Yes, and we need to add the URL there as well. Okay. Yeah, next we need to configure the local and outbound authentication configuration. So in the authentication type, you need to switch to federated authentication and select GitHub IDP. So now all is set. Now all we have to do is test our login flow. So before that, we'll just log out of our GitHub. So we'll be prompted for login again. Okay, so now we are at Travelocity. So let's go ahead and log in. So I'm going to click try to log in with SAML redirect binding here. Yeah, so now we've been directed to GitHub and they ask for our credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my GitHub credentials here. Yeah, so for the first time that you sign in, they'll ask for authorization. And let's go ahead and authorize. And so, yeah, so the login has now been successful. And consent, yeah, so we've been successfully logged into Travelocity using GitHub as an IDP. So that's a brief demonstration on how to set up GitHub as an IDP. Yeah, so for more information, please refer the documentation in GitHub. We'll be providing the links down in the description below. So now it's time for some questions. Also, for your information, our community call for May will also be happening during the last Thursday of this month. So make sure that you set a reminder for that and watch the community call as well. So it seems that I'm not getting any questions here. So if any questions come up, please join our Slack channel and please feel free to post your questions in our Slack channel. And the links will be shared down in the description below. So that's that. That's how we integrate GitHub as an IDP in WSO2 Identity Server. So let's meet again with another episode like this. Cheers.